recording. Yes, I see live. We are live.
Doing it live.
We're doing it. We are on. Thank you so much for Jesse for joining me on my podcast. This is my second time doing this, and apparently I am still trying to figure out how to hit the record button enough times to actually go live. So I appreciate your patience.
Oh, you are good. You are good. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm really excited.
Yes. Okay. So to do a quick little intro, Jesse is with me from the Subto community. And the reason why he joined me on my podcast is because I connected with him through one of the Facebook groups. There was a notice about a connector meeting, and I'm very interested in this. My MSA back when I started was like, yeah, I think you'd be a good connector. And I don't know what that means. And so just little tidbits that I picked up here and there. And then I see this recording in the last 2 weeks have really made a difference for me in understanding a little bit more about what this means and how I can use it. And so I'm in Project Forward. And I was like, this is going to be great. I'm going to ask Jesse if he'll join me on my podcast and we can talk about connector and get the word out. And, see if there's any other people out there struggling like I have been with trying to understand, is this really the connector? Is this the avatar that I should be? Like, do I really fit this? What does it mean? And so thank you so much for joining me.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again for the opportunity. I think your MSA was right. I think you are the connector. And I can't believe, like, just the way that you present yourself, just the way that you articulate and you communicate. Like, I really refuse to believe that you're now just getting your podcast off. I mean, you seem like you've been doing this for a while now.
I appreciate that. Well, I in my W-2, I have to do a lot of talking and presenting with my team and walking through things, and so I think that helps me out a little bit.
Well, you're a natural at it. I think your MSA hit the nail on the head.
Thank you. So, okay. So what I want to do first is I know a little bit about you from the meetings, but in case you're new to the audience, tell us a little bit about your background. Like, how did you get into Subto?
For sure. Great question. So, I live in Alaska. I live up here in a small igloo with a wife and 4 kids and 2 Yorkies and 3 moose, and somehow we manage. I don't really know how, but I was in the military at the time. I did 14 and a half years in the military before I ended up getting out and going into real estate full time. But the last 3 years of my military career, I had a friend that hit me up, and he said, we're kind of just getting connected. We were childhood friends. So we haven't talked in like 15, 20 years. And so we got connected. This was early. This is like the very first of the year it was either the end of 2019 or the beginning of 2020. And we're just kind of doing the whole back and forth on Facebook. Like, hey, what are you up to? Hey, what are you up to? How's everything going? Do you have kids? Where you living? Blah, blah, blah. And he eventually asked me, he's like, Jesse, have you ever thought about getting into real estate? And I thought to, because I used to live in Phoenix. And I was like, yeah, I thought about getting my license when I lived in Phoenix. And he's like, no. It's like, I'm not talking about being a realtor. It's like, I'm talking about being an investor. Ooh. And I was like, wow, I hadn't thought about it, to be honest with you. But if you don't know, and for anybody who doesn't know, for people who are in the military, it's not like we just got 6 figures burning a hole in our pocket so that we can go buy a 4-plex. And so that's what I told him. And he's like, no. He's like, you know what? Thankfully, he was really patient with me. And he says, you know what? I've got a meeting with a couple of other investors later in the week. How about you just jump on and just be a fly on the wall? And I was like, well, twist my arm. Let's go do it. And so I did. I jumped into this meeting. And to be honest with you, Stephanie, it wasn't even something that I had ever crossed my mind. I wasn't really interested in even going. But I didn't want it to be weird, because I told my friend, like, we just reconnected, and I didn't want it to be weird if I just like blew it off or gave some excuse or something like that. So reluctantly, I jumped into the Zoom and I turned my camera off, turned my mic off. I'm just sitting on the couch, just kind of half-heartedly listening. And they started talking about buying properties and leveraging other people's money and other people's credit and other people's debt. And I turned my game off and I kind of put my phone back and I'm like, oh, well, this sounds like a scam. Let me hear more. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where the rabbit hole started for me. And it was literally like right after that I found out about Pace. Pace had just started this mentorship. And I was like, man, this is really amazing. I heard him he had an interview with Steve Trang. This was maybe 3.5 years ago, maybe a little bit more now. Mm-hmm. And in this interview he was doing with a gentleman named Steve Trang. I think Steve Trang's podcast is called Real Estate Disruptors, if I remember right. And in this video that he did with Pace, the name of the video, you can go back and listen to it. Really great video. It's something about how to cash flow 20 grand a month in 4 months using creative finance, something like that. That's what the title of the video was. So if you go back and you find it and you listen to it, it's a really great video. But in there's this guy named Pace Morby, and he's talking about how to buy all these properties using creative finance.
Nice.
And I was like, oh, and not only was he explaining it, but he was telling Steve in this podcast, he was telling him exactly what he says verbatim to these sellers to help. I mean, he's a master storyteller. Yes. And so anyway, it was all this value, and it was way more value than other programs I had paid for before joining Subto. I paid for a program before joining Subto that was $23,000. And I didn't even I was in the military. I only even got 23 grand. I maxed out 2 credit cards doing it, Stephanie. But I was like, man, you know what? If I can make another $100,000 a year or something like that, then it would be worth it. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was really interesting just to hear the value that this guy named Pace Morby was giving for free on some podcasts. And he was like telling everybody verbatim, this is what you say to a seller. This is what you did. And I was like, man, if this guy is giving this much value for free, I cannot imagine what his mentorship is like. So I ended up joining shortly after. So I've been in Subto for 3.5 years. I'm a mastermind student, and it's just been amazing. I was able to leave my W-2. I did 14 years in the Air Force, like I said, and now just doing this full time. My business partner, Chris, lives in Alaska. And everybody who's not in Alaska, by the way, would call you guys the lower 48. So we're just the lower 48 is just kind of our playground. We're just doing wholesaling and fix and flips and creative finance and single family, multifamily, commercial, residential. We're just kind of doing anything and everything,
Nice.
So it's been fun.
Wow. Okay. So wait, so you were here in Phoenix where Pace is, and you moved to Alaska. So what prompted that move?
Regrettably. Yeah. I get that a lot. They're like,
that igloo's got to be
must
small.
Be nice.
The igloo's got to be too small at this point. Like, you got to upgrade.
Yeah, 100%. So I originally came up here in 2010 with the Air Force. Okay. It was my second duty station. So I kind of got a flavor of it when I was up here in 2010. Was here for 3 years, left in 2013, and went down to Phoenix November of 2013. Okay. And you've been to Phoenix in November. Like, it's beautiful, 65 degrees. So that's like an Alaska summer, FYI. Like if it hits 75 degrees in Alaska, that's the equivalent of 120 degrees for people who live in Phoenix. Wow. Like 75 degrees in Alaska for people's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. Like, where is the AC at? This is hot.
Okay.
So when I moved down there, it was like, oh my gosh, like this is kind of hot. Everybody else is in like snowboarding gear because it's not 500 degrees outside. And we're in shorts and flip flops, so it was awesome. But I thought when I moved down to Phoenix that I was going to live there I was like, man, I'm going to retire here.
Yeah.
And then after 5 years, my wife finished up nursing school and was working at a nurse in Phoenix, or at a hospital in Phoenix. Mm-hmm. And we popped out a couple kids while she was in nursing school. And when you're going through your mid 20s and you have a couple kids, your perception starts changing. You do a lot of maturing. We thought, man, you know what? It might be kind of cool to move back to Alaska, and raise a family there where they got moose in their front yard and you got world-class fishing down the street. And anyway, so we came back up here in 2018 and just love it. It's been awesome.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, first off, thank you so much for your service. Like, seriously.
Oh, you bet. Thank you.
Family in the military. Yeah, I know what that means. So thank you.
Absolutely. Definitely. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes. Okay. So you're in Subto. They didn't have the Avatar series. So how how did you come upon being the ultimate connector?
That's such a great question. I originally started, so they didn't have the Avatar series, and I brought up the book Rocket Fuel. So in Rocket Fuel, it brings up two major, I guess you could call them kind of umbrella, what I would call umbrella avatars. So you have an integrator or a visionary.
Yeah.
And then for everybody else who's familiar with the rest of the Avatar series that Pace is talking about, they got like 12 to 15 different avatars, and they kind of intertwine between one of those two umbrellas. Either, a visionary or an integrator. And so I thought to myself, well, I'm certainly not an integrator. I don't find enjoyment sitting behind computers and running numbers and all that kind of stuff. Just personality wise, I think I would be a visionary. And so the only other thing to do was to either learn how to build relationships and close deals. That was kind of how I saw my role in my business. So I'm like, all right, well, I've got to learn what sales is. I've got to learn how to more effectively communicate. I've got to learn how to articulate myself better. I've got to learn how to persuade. I've got to learn how to tell stories and do it in a way that, relates, or and I can paint a picture to the audience or to the prospect that I'm talking to get them to see things from a different perspective. So that's how I started structuring my day. I started structuring my day simply just around focusing on that one thing, around being a closer and trying to not only be the best closer I can be, but be the Michael Jordan of closers, to be in that 1%. And so it really took a lot of time and dedication in learning how to do that. But the good thing and the bad thing about this is, well, most people I think would see it as a bad thing, because I think the mistake that most people make when they start, whether a new skill or a new habit or whatever, they are under the impression that they have to be the one to do everything.
Yeah.
So
right here.
we're all making goals. We got fourth quarter around the corner, right? So come November, December time, everyone's going to be setting goals for 2024. Now I've been in around enough people to know that when it comes time to set those goals, most people are putting very generic and very general goals in there. Like, I want to make 20 grand a month by December of the following year.
Yeah.
But then that's kind of really it. When somebody asks you what's your goals, oh, well, this is my goal. I'm going to get into wholesaling. I'm going to use that money. I'm going to get into creative finance, but then I'm going to make 20 grand by the end of the year. So that's a wrong way to look at goals. That's a wrong lens to be looking at goals through. So come January, what they end up doing is literally anything and everything in their business. They're the one doing all the lead generation. They're the one learning how to do the systems and to operate and organize the CRM, the follow-up. They got to learn how to close now. They have to learn how to do the paperwork. They have to learn how to go find buyers. They have to learn how do you maintain those relationships with your buyers. How do you go raise private capital? How do you learn the paperwork? There's about 20 million things that need to be done in any business, any real estate business, from the time that you start organizing a list of prospects to the time that you actually close a deal and collect a check.
Yeah.
So the mistake most people make is doing anything and everything in between. But when you have clarity and you're only focused on one thing, and your entire day is structured on that one thing, and you're no longer doing everything, the good news is, and I think it's good news regardless, is now your obstacle is like, all right, well, if I'm only closing deals, if I'm only focused on how to negotiate, then I no longer have lead generation coming in, right? Because that's not a part of my role as a closer.
Right.
Lead generation is not a part of the role. Handling paperwork is no longer part of the role. Building relationships with buyers, that's not a part of my role as a closer. My job as a closer is simply just to close deals.
Right.
So if I'm no longer doing those things, then the question I need to be asking myself isn't how do I figure out how to go find deals? How do I figure out how to find buyers? That's the wrong question. And that's the question that most people ask themselves. The question isn't how, it's who. Who is already doing this? And who do I need to be working with? And when you look at it through that lens, it becomes very, very apparent on what your next steps are and what you need to be doing, who you need to be working with. Because if your avatar is a closer, somebody else's avatar is direct to seller. Somebody else's avatar is direct to agent. Somebody else's avatar is being a bird dog.
Right.
Somebody else's avatar is being a connector. So those are the people that you need to go find that you can work with and you can bring into your business. And so from the get-go, That's what I did. Was I focused on one thing, and once I focused on one thing, it was obvious where all the holes were in my business.
Nice.
And so I didn't have to go figure out how to do it. I figured out who is already doing it. And through just as a byproduct of doing that, I learned the skills on how to be a connector as well. So as we've continued building and scaling our business, I'll give you another quick example. Are you familiar with a system called Investor Lift?
Yes, I've heard of it.
So you've heard of it. Do you know what it is?
No.
So Investor Lift, think of it kind of like a system that has all these vetted buyers all ready to go. They're proven buyers. They're vetted, and they're nationwide. They're all over the place. So, now Investor Lift, I've seen it. I don't know what it runs, but I've seen it run anywhere from like 10,000 all the way up to like 30 or 40,000. So I think there's a tiered system and things like that. But obviously, if you're wholesaling a lot, like those are small pennies. That's pennies in the bucket for what you get, right?
Okay.
So one of the things that I ended up doing, that I ended up learning through this process, was if I'm no longer being the one that has to learn how to dispo, because you either have more time or you have more money in this business. And if all my attention and time and dedication was focused on being the Michael Jordan of closing deals, then I don't have any time to go find buyers once I get it under contract.
Right.
So my thought process is, well, who is dispoing? Who can dispo nationwide? Well, for starters, people who have Investor Lift.
Okay.
So when I went out and built a relationship with those individuals, and I said, hey, how about we work together? How about you come into my business? How about you come into my home? You can hang your stuff up by the fire. I'll give you some soup. I'll give you a blanket. We'll have fun. We'll put some movies
in the
on.
igloo.
Come in, man. Exactly. And so that's why I ended up doing. I brought these people into my business, and now guess what? Now guess what sign I get to hang up in front of my door now?
What?
Who needs help dispoing? I have access to 4 million vetted buyers nationwide. How can I help you dispo?
Okay. All right. So you brought these people in. Okay. What exactly does that look like then? Are you doing a JV kind of thing, or how do you partner up with them or work with them? Are they 1099?
Yeah. Yep. They're 1099. Or sometimes we'll bring them in, we'll make them part of the actual business. Just kind of depends. So one thing I like to do anytime that I'm working with anybody, I heard this from Pace, and I thought this was just so genius. One of the mistakes that I think that I made, especially early on, was you join a partnership and you know that you've got to go through the grind of things. You're trying to figure out how they operate. They're trying to figure out how you operate. You're trying to refine your process, your communication, all that kind of stuff. What your accountability is going to look like. How are you going to hold them accountable, but at the same time, not make it awkward? How are they going to hold you accountable and not make it awkward? All these things, right, that you got to figure out. So one of the mistakes that I made was, and I think I've seen this from a lot of other people as well, but just acknowledging it was something that's really huge. But staying in the wrong partnership, thinking that it's going to work out, is one of the biggest time wasters you can do.
I've heard that.
I heard this from Pace. He said one of the things that he enjoys doing, and I've adopted the same process ever since, is anytime you join up or you link up with somebody, bring somebody else into your business, you form a new partnership, whatever that is, you set the expectation up front of saying, hey, we're going to work together for 90 days. Now, whether we are doing absolute crap or whether we are making a lot of money, our partnership is done on day 90, no matter what. 100% of the time, it's going to be done. We're done. Now, if we want to continue this partnership on day 91, let's have a conversation then.
Good idea. Yeah.
That way you already know. You're not wasting too much. Not wasting
more than that. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
Not wasting a year thinking that it's going to work out. Right up front, you set the expectation. Hey, on day 90, we're done regardless.
Okay.
So yeah, that's kind of one of the big, game changers that Chris and I have both implemented into our business when it comes to, working with people and growing our network and the individuals that we're making money with.
Right. So then how do you decide, okay, this is going to be somebody that I do want to do that 90-day partnership with
Mhm.
versus, nope, this is going to be something that I'm just going to bring them on my team and they're going to be either an employee or a subcontractor. Like, how do you determine which way you want to go with that?
It honestly just I don't think there's a blanketed answer for that. It honestly just kind of depends on how those 90 days go. You know, are you a tugboat in that situation where you
Yeah.
have to tug them along? Like I remember being in the military, it's kind of the same mindset. You see this all over the place. But I remember one of my peers was giving feedback to an airman. And in
Mhm.
that feedback, he was telling him, he's like, dude, like you're a great dude, but I've got to tell I'm a tugboat here. I've got to tell you to do every little thing. What I need you to do is you're good if you see the trash can is full, you're good with taking it out, but then I've got to be the one to come back and tell you to put a new trash bag in the trash can.
Yeah,
You
I can
know, so
relate.
that's also a metaphor for a lot of the
Yes.
things that happen in our business. Like if you see something that needs to be done, are you taking the initiative to go do it? What, because you get paid in direct relation to what the value is and the skills that you bring to the marketplace.
That's right.
So if somebody has to continuously tell you to metaphorically, you got to replace the trash bag in the trash can, that's not somebody that I'm going to continue working with, on day 90. I'm not here to be a tugboat. If
Yeah.
you're, it comes down to mindset. It comes down to mindset.
Yeah.
If I find somebody, even if they don't necessarily fit that position, if they have the ability to grow into that position, then I will bring them on.
Okay.
So there's a lot that just goes into those 90 days, that you're evaluating them and working together and kind of refining your processes. And like I said, communication and things like that. What is the
Yeah.
mindset? What is the initiative?
All right.
So
Cool. So,
great
okay.
question,
So
though.
you're talking about connector.
Hmm.
So what does that mean to be a connector?
I think honestly, in its most simplest form, I think it's being a professional friendship builder.
Nice. Okay.
I think that's
I
what it
like
is.
it.
I spent the last couple years, like I said, kind of building this skill, but then it really took off and we really refined it last year. Um, when Chris and I first got together, we attended the mastermind in March.
Okay.
And coming out of that mastermind, we weren't partners, but we were on each other's, I guess you could call them, like it was an extreme accountability group. There's about 4 or 5 of us, and we called it a board of advisors. So we would
Nice.
meet once a week, and it was accountability on a very, very extreme level. And so
Mm.
while we were on each other's board, obviously we got to know each other a little bit more. And after a couple months, we were like, man, I think there's something here. Like I think we should probably, like, let's do something together.
Yeah.
And so leading up to, we went into business together June 1st of last year. And leading up to that, we were like, man, I don't know, like this makes too much sense. Like we need to work together, but I don't know in what faucet, I don't know what capacity, I don't know what this looks like. We've both been in Subto for a while now. We've both been doing real estate at a high level now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what this looks like, but hey, just to get some traction, just to fail forward, let's just see how many Subto students we can help get their first deal by the end of the year, and then we'll refine our process through that way.
Okay.
And so that's where this whole connection thing started, because
Okay.
that was kind of how our business was going to be moving forward. So the mistake that most people make, and I love using this, I'm a very tongue-in-cheek individual, I'm a very sarcastic individual, but most people wake up as if they woke up on accident.
Mm.
And
I
especially
heard you
people
say
who
that
want
at
to
one of
be a
the
connector.
meetings. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's
but
true.
it's so true. It's literally almost as if somebody wakes up and it's like, oh my gosh, I'm alive today. What am I going to do
Now
today?
what?
Well, let me roll over and see what's on Facebook. And so they
Oh,
go through
yeah.
on Facebook. They slide into people's DMs. They're commenting on random people. They might try to get on a random phone call that day, or hop on into a random Zoom going on in Subto or from anybody else, or they might,
Mhm.
whatever it is. And so, especially as a connector, that's not how you build a business. That's not how you structure a business. When you live life randomly, you're going to continue living in the land of mediocrity. So we can't just be completely random. It's got to be structured. It's got to be very intentional. And
Yeah.
so with that thought process in mind, if we're going to talk to a bunch of people, obviously I can't build a business simply just posting in a bunch of, making a bunch of posts in Subto or sliding into people's DMs or, anything like that. I have to wake up every day already knowing how my day is going to be. And so what we ended up doing was we downloaded an app called Calendly, and we gave
Mm.
ourselves a week, and we said, hey, we're not doing anything in our business for the next week. The only thing we're doing is spending every waking second getting that Calendly filled for the next 60 days.
Okay.
And so it was really interesting because we were doing like 50 hours a week in just one-on-one Zooms, and they were hour-long Zooms. They weren't like 20 minutes or 30 minutes or 15 minutes. They were hour-long Zooms. So we were meeting with dang near 200 people a month, which was really interesting. Now, when you're meeting with that many people, some of it's going to be time wasted. It's kind of like going through a list of like 5,000 prospects and like cold calling them. Like you got to get through that list to find like the ones that are going to be the deals, right?
Okay.
So kind of similar when you're talking with just that many people. There's no really intention behind it, but you got a lot of volume. And so what we learned from that was within the first 60 days of us doing this, we made over 72,000 and some change. And so we're like, oh my
Wow.
gosh, like there is something here. And not only
Yeah.
that, when you're talking to that many people, tell me you're not going to find money. Tell me you're not going to find deals. Tell me you're not going to find those who's that you can bring into your business.
Yeah.
Those opportunities to recruit.
Wow.
So we learned a lot just within the first 60 days of doing this. And we're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy, because most people who have a Calendly, they just have it absent-mindedly. It's like, hey, I've got one. Hey, I met you. You seem cool. Here's my Calendly link. Go ahead and shoot me, schedule a time when it's convenient for you type of deal. That's how most people use their Calendly.
Yeah.
But we were like, dude, we can't wake up randomly. I can't just say, hey man, you're cool. You can't run a business like that. It has to be very meticulous, has to be intentional, has to be structured, has to be consistent. Most people aren't consistent. If you want to start seeing a lot of progress, you've got to be consistent. So that was kind of where it all started, honestly. And then definitely as we continued refining that process, even to this day, that's still, I don't have time. We built our business up to, I don't have time to do 50 hours a week in Zooms, but it's something that we recognized as a blueprint. And it's like, we can't afford to not be doing this.
Right.
Okay. And so we've
so
gotten more intentional.
I'm still thinking $72,000 in 2 months. Like, how exactly, what does that look like? Was that you talked to people, you said there were deals, there was money, there was this or that? Like, does that mean that you got a part of some of those deals? You were able to end up putting your closer hat on and closing some of those deals, and you got a piece of the pie? Like, what made up that $72,000?
Literally everything. I found buyers for wraps. I closed some of the deals. I found somebody else who had investor lift, and I negotiated a deal that was sub-2 for $0. Found somebody else to find a buyer for it, and so we wholesaled it for 30 grand. Cost me nothing. So anyway, it was literally just a culmination of everything. And so because I'd been talking with so many people, I literally had, if I didn't know the answer, I knew exactly who did.
It goes back to the who.
It goes back to the who. 100%.
Wow.
So it was literally everything. So whether it was commercial, I mean, we were talking to people with storage units, laundromats, hotels, everything, apartment complexes, single family homes, literally everything.
Wow. Okay. So were you connecting with people in the Subto Facebook groups, or who were you reaching out to?
I think the best answer is, who was I not reaching out to?
Okay.
Honestly.
All right. So don't limit yourself. That's the point.
What?
Don't limit yourself when you're reaching out to people.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's just my mindset. Like I go to such extremes in my head. I remember I was telling somebody else about this, actually, as a matter of fact. When I was in the Air Force, every year you got to do a physical training test, a PT test.
Yes.
And you've got to do sit-ups, you got to do push-ups, and you got to run a 1.5 miles, and everything is timed.
Mm-hmm.
So for a lot of people, including myself, every single year, I always scored excellent. but every single year it caused me so much anxiety. So much anxiety because my head just goes to such extremes. And it is kind of a big deal if you fail a PT test. Probably not. It's not as big as I made it out in my head. But in my head, the day of the PT test, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to fail this. And then I'm going to get kicked out of the Air Force. And then I'm not going to be able to make my payments on my house. And my whole entire family's going to be out on the streets. And then, like, it just went from 0 to 100 like that. Right. Yeah. So it's a blessing and a curse because in my business, it goes to the same extremes. And so I think I shared this in our connector series that we're doing too. And maybe I didn't, I don't remember, but this is how my head thinks. Like if my wife and kids were kidnapped and held at gunpoint, and the only way that I got to see them alive again was if I filled up my Calendly for the next 60 days.
Yeah.
What is it that I'm not going to do, Stephanie? When I get home from work and I'm tired AF, am I going and laying down or am I working my ass off? Am I sleeping 8 hours a day anymore?
Right.
Nope.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So what is it that I'm not going to do? Who is it that I'm not going to talk to?
Yeah.
And then the people that you talk to, if you're very intentional with it, because whether you have a service-based business, whether you're a connector, whatever it is that you're trying to do in your business, unless you tell people about it, nobody knows about it.
The sign. You got to hang your sign.
That's what hang your sign up, right?
Yes, he was saying that in Project Forward. He's like, does a hamburger joint not put their sign out? Like, how do you know if you're not, how is anybody going to know that you're selling hamburgers if you're not putting your sign out? And that to me, I was like, yeah, that's a point. That he made such a huge point in that simple statement. I was like, okay, yep, I got to get my YouTube up. I got to get my Calendly ready. I got to be more active on Instagram and on Facebook. Oh my gosh, that right there. I was like, yeah. And how is anybody supposed to know if you don't say something?
Right.
Yeah.
And so naturally, when you're connecting with people and you're having these conversations, and again, it's just my mind. I always go into these different games that I play with myself. And so when I'm connecting with somebody, I have these connector meetings still every day. Like I said, my intent, my game in my head is to be so interested in that other person and what they have going on that they don't even have a chance to say, Jesse, what do you have going on? Or how can I help you?
That's good.
And so, when you're that dedicated and people can, and it's got to be genuine, obviously.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's got to be genuine because people can tell, but that's what I love doing. That's how I build relationships. It's you have to be interested, not interesting. And like I said, when you're talking with that many people, the example that I gave was like, kind of like when you're talking with you're combing through a list of 5,000 people just to get those few. Same thing when you're talking to 200 people a month. You know, you're going to have people who just want to talk about themselves and everything that they're doing. And it's kind of like, okay, cool. Well, it was great connecting with you. You know, thanks.
Yes.
But then you're also going to have those people at the very end that are going to, there's that law of reciprocity. It's like, dude, thank you so much. Thank you for the connection. Thank you for the help. Thank you for helping me with this lead. Thank you for calling, whatever. What can I do for you?
Yeah.
So the only thing that we asked was like, hey, dude, if this was helpful to you, please just go tell somebody about it. Go make a post in Subto and just share our calendar.
Yes.
Like if you could do that alone, that would literally mean the world to me.
Yeah. I think that's a bit of gold right there that you dropped. The point is not to be interesting. Take that pressure off yourself. It's not that you have to be all of this and do all of these things and have all of these accomplishments or whatever, but to be interested in that other person. Real estate is the relationship industry, right? I mean, I've learned that since I've gotten into this, that you have to make connections with people. What is the saying? Your net worth is your network is your net worth, right?
Yes. Yep.
So yes. So for me, that really helps me step out of my comfort zone saying, I'm doing this. I'm doing this podcast with you, not for me, but because I thought this is going to be great to help all the other connectors out there. And I want to help get the word out. And I don't have to be interesting. I could just ask questions that if I'm asking these questions, if I'm thinking this, then maybe somebody else is asking these same kind of questions, right? So yeah, that right there, I think will probably help a lot of people taking that uncomfortable action and stepping out there and doing these things, reaching out to people, because it's not that you necessarily have to already have all your ducks in a row. I felt that when I first started too. I'm like, how am I supposed to add value? I don't even know anything about real estate. I'm trying to figure this stuff out. But, Pace said on one of his podcasts, do you know where the files are? Okay, so there's newbies coming in that don't know where the files are. Do you know how to get on a Discord? Okay, well, there's people that haven't figured out how to get on a Discord, right? So there's always a way. And it reminded me of, with my son, since he was very little, I've always been focused on trying to teach him an attitude of gratitude, right? Like you have to be grateful. The happiest life is going to be one that's filled with being grateful, right? For what you have, not thinking about all the things that you're missing, but all of the things that you have, and looking for opportunities to help other people. Right. But I had to be reminded of that because I was like, I don't know how I'm going to help anybody. I'm just still trying to figure this out. So there you go. Right. We can help each other and help other people out by being interested in what they're doing and what they're saying, where they're starting at, and shedding a little spotlight on there and maybe giving them a little bit of direction. So thank you for that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, okay. Now I'm wondering, like, what has been your biggest challenge then that you've faced on this journey? And it could be specifically with the connector part of it or just in real estate in general.
You know what? The biggest challenge, honestly, has just, I think there's lots of different challenges, and that's just part of being an entrepreneur. Yeah. But for me, where I am right now, the biggest challenge for me is that I live in Alaska. So I'm 4 hours behind everybody else. Yeah. And not only that, there's nobody here doing what I want to be doing.
Oh.
Like there's literally when I joined Subto, I remember joining Subto and I went to one of the local meetups here. They don't even have a RIAs, by the way. Nobody knows what a RIA is up here. Yeah, they have no idea. So literally, like Alaska's like 30 years behind the times. They're still waiting to figure out that Nirvana is no longer a band. That's where we are.
Don't talk bad about Nirvana.
No, I love Nirvana. I'm the one that's telling everybody, like, guys, they broke up, right? There's the new band called Foo Fighters. Dave Grohl is part of it, So no, I'm pro Nirvana, man. Actually, one of my favorite quotes ever was from Kurt Cobain. He said, "Wanting to be somebody else is a waste of the person you are."
Yes.
Love that quote from him. But anyway, yeah, like Alaska's just so behind the times. And when I remember going to these other meetings, it wasn't even a RIA. It was just like some real estate agents who, dabble in, investing. They might do a fix and flip here or there. And I remember going to them and I'm sitting here thinking like, dude, like nobody, because I was the only Subto in the entire state for like 18 months when I joined. There was nobody else. So I'm like, dude, like literally have zero competition. Nobody here is getting cold called. Nobody here knows about door knocking. Nobody here knows about creative finance. Nobody knows about how to structure these deals and and nobody knew what wholesaling was, Stephanie, believe it or not. So I'm going to these meetings, man, and I'm sitting here thinking I'm about to clean house. I'm like, dude, I'm about to make 6 figures my first month in Subto, bro. And it was interesting because I went there and it was they're still in that old school mentality. They're very scarcity minded. And I remember after the meeting, I found out who all like the buyers were, people who were buying. And I went and approached them and I introduced myself and said, hey, I would love to hear more about what it is you're looking to do. And I'm going to go find you those things. I'm a real estate investor. I come across X, Y, and Z, every day or every week or whatever. Love to get a better idea on what it is you're looking for and where you're buying so I can bring those to you. And when I said that, they were like, why would I tell you where I'm buying properties? That makes zero sense. Why? So I can compete with you? I'm
Oh
like,
my
no,
gosh.
bro, I want to make you some money. But anyway, that was just the mindset of these guys. They literally had no idea
Wow.
what the crap I was talking about. So anyway, long story short, Stephanie, even to this day, that's kind of where we are. Even
Okay.
there's no title companies that'll do subject to transactions. There's one individual who runs that escrow company who even vaguely knows what we're talking about. So literally she's getting all the business for subject to transactions in the entire state. Like she's killing
Nice.
it.
Good for
But
her. Yeah.
yeah, but anyway, even to this day, there's still a challenge. So my biggest problem is I can't even get into mastermind. There's no masterminds happening here. There's no rooms where people are getting together, talking about big things, wanting to elevate each other, wanting to grow together, wanting to push each other.
Yeah.
That doesn't exist up here. Does not exist. So
Mm,
for the longest time, and I use the word tugboat, for
yeah.
the longest time, it's felt like, because we've tried to create that community here as well. I think there's just shy about 40 Subto students or so up here now. So we've tried to create this community, but it's been a little bit of a challenge. Trying to get these people on board. Even went to a couple title companies and introduced myself, talked to the branch president, because Pace was like, dude, go talk to these people. If they're receptive to it, I'll pay for Sean St. Clair, my attorney, to get on a Zoom with these guys. I will pay for his time to get on a Zoom with these guys and educate them so we can make these transactions happen. And so I
Oh.
did. And not only did they tell me no, Stephanie, they referred me to their competition. They said, no, we don't do that. That's way too much. Maybe the guys across the street, you might want to go over there.
Oh my
So
God.
anyway, that's
Wow.
the biggest struggle in my business right now. So one of the reasons why we're talking about potentially moving back. I'm originally from Idaho Falls. So
Mhm.
we're thinking about moving back down to Idaho Falls maybe sometime within the next couple months or so. Just so I'm plugged in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think
Makes
that's the biggest
sense.
hurdle right now.
Mm. Yeah. I think that's well, not I think. I know that was one of the biggest things that appealed to me about joining Sub 2 was knowing that Pace is here. And then I
Yeah.
found out Jamil is here. And I'm like, "Oh my God, like all these people are here that are huge in this industry, right?" And it's like I'm in their backyard. Of course,
Yeah.
then somebody's like, "Yeah, but you're competing with them then." And I was like, I don't know. I don't know about that. Like, you know, I'm okay being the little fish in their big pond. I'll get bigger. What is that? The greatness is the proximity. Like having that proximity to
Mm,
greatness rubs
yeah.
off of you. I think I saw that with Cody Sanchez. I think she
Mm,
said that there is data out there that shows that if you're, and I could be quoting her wrong, but if you're within 20 feet of someone who is more productive, just being in the proximity of them makes you more productive. There's data on it. So when you're working with people at your W 2, if you're within 20 feet of high performers, you will be a high performer. You will start producing more.
mhm.
And when I saw that, I was like, oh my God. It goes back to the saying that this old lady told me when I was a kid. You hang out with trash, you get it all over you. It goes both ways. If you hang out with the negative trash that's out there that are doing things that are not positive, that are not good,
Mhm.
that's going to bring you down, right? But
Absolutely.
on the flip side of that, if you're surrounding yourself with people that are uplifting, that are go-givers and go-getters, they're making things happen, they're productive, they have that intention every day,
Mm. Yeah.
that is going to bring you up, right? Because you want
Absolutely.
you want to play with the big boys. I want
Yeah.
to play with the big
Yeah.
boys.
Me
So yeah,
too.
yeah, exactly. That's awesome. Okay, so then what would you say is one success or milestone that you've had that you're particularly proud of?
I think doing this connector series.
Yeah.
I think something like that. Because I've never done anything like that. I started a coaching business. I don't know, probably 3 months or so ago. It was in May. It was May when it kicked off. And so even leading up to that, I took the time to practice and refine those skills. So I knew once I started it, I wasn't necessarily practicing at the same time that I'm trying to get it up and running. So it was neat because a lot of the things that we're talking about right now, a lot of things that I did last year with regards to talking to that many people and connecting with that many people, I learned a lot. I got to refine my skills. I got to learn and refine the way that I communicate things, I articulate things. And as I was helping these individuals, I got to figure out what's working and what's not working. Did I articulate that? Did I miscommunicate something? And so I got to build those skills knowing that sometime this year I was going to start a coaching business. And so after I started the coaching business, now we're doing things like the connector series. And then my partner Chris and I also just started doing a series within Subto called Friends with Benefits.
Ah.
So it's a speed dating thing.
It.
I thought you'd get a kick out of it. Yeah. So, but it's avatar based. So it goes along with what we're talking about right now.
Okay.
So your friends, obviously the benefit being whether somebody's a PML, whether somebody can dispo properties, whether somebody's acquisitions or a closer, good on the phone, whether somebody's DTA. Those are the benefits. We're friends. Okay. Those are the benefits. Let's benefit from each other. Let's benefit from this. So anyway, I thought it'd be funny kind of.
My mind went somewhere else, right?
What?
My mind went somewhere else, right?
You know what? I gave no context to it, so you should have seen like everybody who showed up on day 1 2 weeks ago. I was like, all right, just by a show of hands, I want to know like where's all the single people at. So anyway, yeah, it was funny. It was funny. Everyone was like, I have no idea what this is, but I'm here for the party type of deal.
That's awesome.
But the feedback we got from it was really awesome. So everyone's been enjoying it so far. So doing things like this is another milestone for me. Being able to grow and put something together on like this that's benefiting more than just having one-on-ones. I mean, we're consistently just the blowing up the people that are showing up, the registration. I mean, we're basically just maxing out these Zooms, and the attendance and the feedback and everything has just been phenomenal. So when it comes to building my brand and my connections and the things that I'm wanting to do, obviously taking on these types of projects and getting out of my comfort zone and being willing to do something and put something together that I haven't quite to this level yet is something that's really neat. So I'm really proud of the opportunity to be able to do it. So we've done a lot of growth this year. I can say personally, I've done more growth between March of last year and up to present day than I did 14 years in the Air Force. And I'll share something with you real quick. When I attended the mastermind last March, Pace dropped a lot of bombs there. And I took very, very good notes. And one of the things that he said, I think that impacted me the most, he said, Jesse, it's not who you think you are that's holding you back. And then he paused. And I thought about that for a second. I'm like, it's not who I think I am that's holding me back. Okay, got it. So then I thought about who do I think I am? I thought about, I'm a spouse, I'm a father, I'm a son, I'm a neighbor, I'm a friend, I'm involved in my community. I want to retire my parents. I want to be able to help out our church, and I want to be able to give to bigger causes and my kids' school. I think so. Anyway, I just started kind of mulling over overall who I think I am and what I want to do. Okay. And I came back to Pace's phrasing again. It's not who I think I am that's holding me back. Okay, got it. So those aren't the things that's holding me back. And then he continued. He said, it's who you think you are not. And I thought, oh my gosh. If I don't think I'm the type of person that can start a podcast and bring value to it, that's what's holding me back. If I don't think I'm the type of person that can go out and connect all these people and to serve with a higher purpose and at a higher level, then that's literally what's holding me back. And so with just that in mind, we just went crazy last year, and then especially this year. Mm-hmm. And so, with regards to talking about connections and things like that, I don't know if you're familiar. We started a challenge. This was back in May called the Watermelon Challenge.
I did hear that. Yes.
We had hundreds of people show up for this thing, which is really, really cool. But basically, so yesterday on the Connector Zoom, we talked about seeing opportunities, right? We talked about seeing things from a different lens. Mm-hmm. They're right in front of you. They're literally all around us. But most people just aren't seeing them through that opportunity lens. And I know Pace talked about it a few weeks ago on the last Project Forward meeting when he was talking about the handyman, right?
Yeah.
How many people have seen this handyman parked on the side of the street and never thought, oh my gosh, here's an opportunity, right?
Yep.
So it's a skill and it takes practice, You got to be intentional in developing that skill. And so there was a couple individuals, again, through my connector meetings that I do every day. One of them, you've probably heard, his name is Jake Villaret.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he's doing the Creative Credit Partners. That's his business. So basically, his business, as I'm talking with him, he's explaining his business model, and basically, he'll utilize his credit and credentials to go take out a loan for you.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. Well, Stephanie, through a lot of the connections that we were doing last year, we met an individual who we partnered up with and turned our business, Third Mind REI, into a bank. So now directly through me, people can get DSCR loans. They can get construction loans, fix and flip loans, bridge loans. So with us doing this within our business, and then I meet Jake back in like April or March or something, and he's telling me about his business. My lens was on there, right? My lens was, oh my gosh, how do I, because every time I talk to somebody, I'm looking at like, how do we make money together? What does that opportunity look like? And so he's telling me about his business. I'm like, Jake, oh my gosh, hey, here's what we're going to do. Let's put on a challenge. Now there's a saying, I'm sure you've probably heard about it, called "It's better to share a watermelon than to eat your own grape."
I've not heard that.
You've never heard that?
No, but I love watermelons, so I agree.
So it goes back to connecting. There's so many people who don't want to JV, who don't want to connect or anything like that because they want the entire grape and they don't understand the benefits of sharing a watermelon as opposed to eating your own grape. So I saw opportunity and I was like, oh my gosh, we got to put a challenge on, because right now the big thing that everybody's talking about is wholesaling and creative finance.
Right.
Well, when you give a wholesale offer, that's 50% of the dollar, right? Basically 60 cents on the dollar. Well, you're going to have a lot of people that tell you, no, F off, I'm not going to do that. Well, the alternative to that, how we solve that problem, is say, hey, I can give you your price if you give me terms, right?
Yes.
So now we're going into creative financing. Well, now what about the individuals that don't want to wait 5 years, 10 years, 30 years for all their money?
Right.
What most people do is they put them on a follow-up campaign and they just keep following up with them.
Okay.
So my thought process was, oh my gosh, for those individuals that don't want 50 cents on the dollar, they don't want to wait 30 years for their money, why don't we partner up, Jake, and just go take out a loan on these properties? We'll just buy them with a loan. I can do the DSCR. We'll utilize your credit, and we'll show everybody else how we can do this, and they can buy properties with us, or we can pay them a wholesale fee, and we'll just buy all these properties for them, utilizing our own money and credit and credentials, so they don't have to.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, theoretically, they could even just go down Zillow and just underwrite, oh my gosh, I got a cash flowing property. Let's go take a loan out on this. So we brought another conversation to the table, but all this came about because I was looking at things through that lens. So another example, and we'll get into this with the more into the connector series, but that's a really great example on how some of the things that I've done, the strategies that I've used to utilize my avatar as a connector to bring people in, connecting everybody, saying, what do you have and what do you need? And saying, hey, here's a problem that solves all of this. And here's where we can serve a bunch of other people on a higher level. And we'll just go take out loans for people.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, for newbies, right, thinking about changing that lens and looking for the opportunities, like sometimes I'm making those connections. I'm asking people, what are your haves? What are your needs? Right. I'm documenting that. I'm making a note. And I've got lots of notes because I talk to a lot of people, and some things are obvious, but and I think that they're obvious because first off, I'm learning to look for the opportunities, but I think that I don't know if that would be that obvious to anybody else. Like, you could have people where they're looking for the opportunities, but they don't see it yet. They don't recognize it yet. So how could somebody improve that, work that muscle, if you will? How do you get to that point where you can see those creative opportunities? Because I think that's where the value is, right? It's where it's the creative part. It's not necessarily where it's going to be so obvious.
Absolutely.
The obvious ones are going to get snatched up real quick. It's the creative ones.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great question. I was sitting there and kind of combing over it myself. because to me it was obvious. But I mean, how many other Jake Villaret, he's well known in the Gator community, is well known in Subto. How many other
Yep.
people has he had a conversation with, and not one person has approached him and said, "Hey, dude,
Exactly.
here's where we can take out more loans," right? So I think it's a muscle that you have to flex. And one of the things that I've gotten really, really intentional with, especially over the last 18 months, is my self-development, my mindset. And so in order to have something you've never had, you have to do something you've never done. Well, before you can do that, you have to be able to have different information. You can't make a change with the same information. And I know a lot of people getting into this business, they want to create this big successful wholesaling business or fix and flip or creative financing, buy and hold, whatever they're doing, but they're not really changing their mindset. We have to become to make $1 million, you have to become the type of person that's capable of handling $1 million. I mean, Jim Rhodes said this best. He said, if somebody hands you $1 million, it's best that you learn to be a millionaire so that you get to keep the money.
Absolutely.
Now,
well, you just look at all the lottery winners, right? All of these people that win the lottery and they're broke within, a year or whatever. Yeah, that's true.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you have to become an entirely different person. Your character has to change. Your morals have to change. Your accountability has to change. The things that you tolerate in your life have to change. I brought that example up. Are you sleeping 8 hours a day? Okay, that all this stuff that you tolerate, may have to, you got to trade comfort for the discomfort. Yeah. So all these things have to change. So in order to do that, like I said, in order to mold yourself into that type of individual, the only way that you can do that is through having different information. And so you have to become very, very cognizant and intentional with the content and information that you are intaking, because the average person has 70 to 80,000 average thoughts a day. That's a lot, and most of them are subconscious. So we have to start changing how our brain thinks, how we react to things. And when you start doing that with different information, it's crazy, because your mind will physically change. The neurons and the way that it fires will literally change because of how you think differently.
Yeah.
So one of the things I've gotten really into, and I used to hate books.
Yeah.
I was not a reader, dude. I was like, reading books, really? Like, where's Seinfeld at? But yeah. I got really into reading books, and I became I'm addicted to it. That's the best way. I'm obsessed with it. I always have to have a book, always. And so there's two books that I read at the same time. It's two kinds of books. I always read a mindset book and a skill set book, and I read them at the same time.
Okay.
So, and what I mean,
which ones are you reading now?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. I've probably read like 30 or 40 books already this year. I've got a handful that I'm reading. I'll pull up that list in a second. But I always start out my day with a mindset book. I wake up at 3, and before my feet even hit the floor, I have my AirPods that sit on my nightstand. So as soon as my alarm goes off, I throw my AirPods into my ears before I even open my eyes, before my feet even hit the floor, and I've got a mindset book going. One of my favorite mindset books. Maybe it's either like David Goggins or Grant Cardone's got some good ones. Steve Harvey has some great mindset books. Tim Grover, who used to be like Kobe Bryant's and Michael Jordan's personal coach. So he has a book called Winning. It is such an amazing book.
Okay.
But anyway, so I'll start out like one of those mindset books. And so while I'm getting dressed and brushing my teeth and getting my gym clothes on and getting my pre-workout and filling up my gallon of water and then get in the car and I drive to the gym, it's 3:30. So I've got 30 minutes of reading in for the day already. It's not like I sit around for 4, 5, 6 hours just reading books. That's it. It's 30 minutes a day of this book, 30 minutes a day in my skill set book.
Okay.
So I go to the gym. I do all these things. I become very, very intentional with the way that I structure and block out my time. So every single morning, it's the same routine. I'm like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. It's the same freaking day every single day. It's consistency.
Yeah, but you're getting different results.
That is true. Well, it's kind of like what he was doing, right? It's such a great
Wow.
analogy because the first couple days he was like, well, what's going on here? And then
Uh-huh.
what did he start doing? He started having fun with it. He started
Yes.
exploring different things. What's working? What's not working?
Uh-huh.
Let me go try this line on this chick and see if I get slapped or
Uh-huh.
not. You know,
Yes.
and I'll come back and I'm obviously not going to do that same thing again.
Yeah.
So that's how we have to think about our day. Like we got to make sure that we're having fun with it and that we're consistent in it more than anything. But we need to be
Mhm.
adventurous, be willing to go out and try new things, see what works, and see what doesn't work.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, then at the end of the day, I go to bed. Usually, I watch an episode of Seinfeld or something, and then I'll read 30 minutes. And usually, that book revolves around my skill as a closer and as a connector, as a leader. So I'm reading John Maxwell books about leadership. I'm reading books about failing forward. I'm reading books about negotiating and persuading and
Mhm.
storytelling. So a lot of those things that we were talking about, I'm feeding my mind with that information. And so
Okay.
and it's gotten to the point now where I remember when The Office came out. I was a huge fan of The Office for like I am, but for the first decade at least, it was a TV show that was always on in my house. Like
Okay.
whether we would sit down and watch it, whether we were doing the dishes, hell, even when we went and went to Walmart or something, we left it on for the dogs. So it was always on in my house. And since I started reading books, I kind of started doing the same thing. So I'll always have like a mindset book going on. Even when I'm talking with my wife, I'm talking with her, not necessarily listening to the book, but
Yeah.
it's subconsciously like it's always on. So if I'm washing the dishes, if I'm
Mhm.
mowing the yard, if I'm cleaning the house, if I'm going to Walmart, if I'm doing whatever, it's always just something that's, on. And so I'm really,
Yeah.
really intentional. So that's one of the things that I've done that I have found to be beneficial in helping changing those thoughts and exercising that muscle
Yeah.
on a very conscious and subconscious level.
Yeah.
And
I love it.
it
Yeah,
seemed to help
I've
save
been
me
doing
some
that with the
opportunities.
podcasts. Like I'll listen to
Mm,
podcasts when I'm getting ready in the morning and that kind of stuff. And when the books, like I go back and forth with this, and I've actually had conversations with some of my friends because they're like, why don't you have Audible? You should just listen to it. And I'm like, it's gonna go through one ear and out the other. Like I need to see it and I highlight and note and underline and I need to be more involved with that, or it's just gonna I'm not going to absorb it. At least I don't
mhm.
feel like I would as much.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you are actually getting something out of listening to it versus the reading.
Well, I've got I'm always on the go. So I've got everything on my phone, and I'm kind
Okay.
of the same way. But so do you have an iPhone?
No.
Man,
Don't
Stephanie,
tell me.
if people are gonna see this, Stephanie, we'll have to edit that part out. So you can say yes. People in Subto are gonna watch this and be like, well, I can't put her in a group text.
I'm
So
sorry.
well, I've got an iPhone, and I'm sure the Androids are the same, but I have an app that comes stock on it. It's called Notes, and within there, I
Okay.
can create different folders, and just it's a note
Yeah.
taking
Yeah.
app. So I create a different folder for each book that I'm reading, and then as I'm
Okay.
reading it, I'll go in and take notes kind of while I'm on the go if I hear something. But a lot of these books, especially the mindset books, part of being a student is like one of my favorite books is, and I'm sure you're probably familiar with it. How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yes.
Such an
Hmm.
amazing book,
Hmm.
and this applies to literally anything.
Yeah.
But you can read a book, and then either 6 months down the road or 12 months down the road, read that same book again, and you're going to take something new from it
True.
because you're now looking at it through a different lens. You're now in a different season of your life. You're now looking at it from a different perspective. So kind of similar when you have conversations with people, your intent, that muscle, that lens is going to be different because you're not the same person that you were. So
Yeah.
you're reading these books and you're applying the information for what's relevant to what you're currently going through.
Right.
So
Yeah.
kind of the same thing there. And so a lot of the things that I do, both against consciously and subconsciously, is when I'm reading that book, I try to be as intentional as I can with it the first 30 minutes. But throughout the day, so a lot of times I'll read the same book 5, 6, 7 times in a row, and I just always have it on in my ear or in the car, like it's
Yeah.
always playing in the background. Um, But but for the 30 minutes that I have time blocked, that's the part that I try to be really intentional with.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, you've sold me. I'm gonna get
But
Audible. I'm gonna start listening.
well, wait
I'll
a minute.
add
Let me contact Audible real quick. Maybe I ought to get like an affiliate link through Audible
I
so I can
know.
start telling everybody that. Yeah, need to build a
I should
connection over there.
yeah, I should reach out to them before I post this
There you go.
on my
Let's
YouTube
let's
channel.
create an affiliate link together. Yeah.
Yes.
There we go.
Yes, that's right. That's awesome. Uh, I think Pace is supposed to show us that in the upcoming project forwards, how we can monetize.
You know, it's so funny that's something we were going to end up talking about through the connector series as well. Because there's other ways that I'm making money through, connections with different businesses and things like that. And so
Yeah.
when you're talking with people every single day, you never know what anybody's going to go through, or what kind of resource they're going to need. So there's always
Love
that
it.
opportunity to not only connect them with another person, but maybe another service or something like that. So
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. So I know we're over time. I appreciate you hanging out with me. This has been awesome. So I would say one question left
Uh-oh.
for our new connectors that maybe possibly missed the last two meetings. What would you say, like what advice would you give them, or what would be the first one or two steps that you would say you got to do this to get started?
You cannot, I think it goes back to some of those things we were talking about. You can't live every day sporadically. You have to make, if you're wanting to be a connector. And that's why with the connector series, I wanted to make, not just show people how to monetize it. Like I wanted to say, hey, if you want to be a connector, this is how you're going to have to build a business. Let's if we're going to do it, let's do it right. Right. So same thing with anybody. If you're wanting to start getting your feet wet with being a connector, getting very intentional on how you're going to structure your day and who you're going to be talking to, I'd say are probably one of the biggest two things. You should never wake up and wonder who you're going to talk to that day and what you're going to talk about. Get really clear on what it is you're trying to do, so you know who you're going to talk to and you know when you're going to talk to them. And if you can do those two things, that's why the homework in that first episode was, hey guys, we don't want to throw a lot on you. Let's just focus on an hour a day. If you can do an hour a day and break them up into 2 30-minute meetings, let's get some consistency down. Let's get a routine down before we start building. Let's start a foundation, and we're going to start building on top of that. So for anybody wanting to start out, I would say getting clarity on those two things: who you're going to talk to, what you're going to talk about, and then when are you going to talk to them. So every single day, you know what time you're going to be connecting with other people. I think those would be one of the big two things to get started.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate this.
Of course. Yeah, you did fantastic. I can't believe that you're just starting this out. This was really awesome. Thank you. I had a great time.
Thank you. I love it. All right. Take care.
Thank you, Stephanie. Have a good one.